Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Meet America. I'm Annie Griffin, your host, and tonight we're going to watch how horses are slaughtered in slaughter plants. And I hope that you have the courage to watch, because maybe then you'll do something to stop it. I'm going to be naming all the Congress members that voted to reinstate horse slaughter in the United States for the 2018 omnibus budget bill. Luckily, our own Congressman Jimmy Panetta did not, and we thank him for that. But the members of Congress that did, in my opinion, are not fit to serve the American people. They do not represent our compassion. They don't represent anything that's really compassionate or forward-thinking. These animals, horses, rode us through history on their backs. America would not be what it is today if it weren't for the horse. We owe the horse more loyalty and protection than we do dogs, cats, or any other animal on the face of the planet. They are a God-given gift if you believe in God. And if you don't believe in God, they're still an infinite creation gift that enabled us to grow our food, to transport us through history, and advance us to where we are today. So, having said that, our domestic horses and our wild horses are going to slaughter. And there is no kind, cruel way to kill a horse. First of all, they're the most noble and dignified, probably, of all the animals that are slaughtered. And actually, I shouldn't say that, because so are the cows, so are the sheep, so are everything else. But what I'm trying to say is we don't slaughter our dogs and cats, and we shouldn't be slaughtering our horses. They're domestic friends of ours, more than any other animal. And we need to get away from eating animals and not start allowing these Congress members to reinstate horse slaughter because they're saying that, oh, well, it's so cruel to transport them to Canada and to Mexico. Let's reopen the horse slaughter plants here because we'll do it in a much better manner. No, they won't do it in a much better manner because there is no better manner. There's no way of doing it gracefully. And this horse in this slaughter plant is going to prove it to you because it was shot 11 times before it actually expired. And many of these horses have been witnessed to be skinned alive because they're still kicking out at the person who's trying to get that dime-sized mark on their forehead, and they can't do it. So they just hoist them up and they start slaughtering, skinning them alive. And they do that to the cows as well in these slaughter plants. So having said that, please, I want you to take a look at all the members that voted and call them and tell them what monsters they are. They're absolute monsters, in my opinion. They don't have heart. They're mostly Republican, believe it or not. And the Republicans are just all business, in my opinion. There's very few compassionate Republicans that vote for our health care concerns, that, they say that they're pro-life and therefore they want to abolish abortion. But if you ask them to make sure that there's enough money in the coffers to take care of these unwanted children, oh no, they won't do that. They won't even take them into their own homes. So they're just a bunch of phonies, and this is the proof of the pudding. You're going to watch this, and you're going to be horrified that these people represent the American people. So thanks for watching. And if you can't watch, well, at least call your Congress member and say, don't ever vote for horse slaughter. Please. So this is a horse that's being slaughtered and shot 11 times. And these are the members of Congress that vote for this. You know, and you'd think if they were going to be voting for it, they would at least do some research ahead of time. These, to me, should not be in Congress. And I'm hoping by putting their names on the screen, people will start calling them and telling them what you've seen and how could they vote for horse slaughter. Congressmember Adderhall is on the Appropriations Committee, very powerful man, wields your tax dollars like it was an endless source of money, and he voted for this. And we've got a lot of our wild horses in Alabama on ranches, private ranches, from the BLM. And God knows they just disappear. BLM's numbers are all skewed. They're a very, very corrupt agency, in my opinion, and not just mine, but as far as the Department of Justice goes, the investigations that have been done that have proven that the BLM has slaughtered horses with our tax dollars, which is unlawful. Anyway, those members on the screen there all have voted for horse slaughter. And I'm going to ask you to call this number. And I'm going to read out some more names. Andy Harris, Republican. Jamie Hara Butler from Washington. You have Evan Jenkins, Republican again, from Washington. John Mulliner from Michigan, a Republican. Dan Newhouse, a Democrat. No, he's a Republican, excuse me, from Washington. Stephen Palazzeo from Mississippi, a Republican. Martha Roby, a Republican from Alabama. Harold Rogers, a Republican from Kentucky. Michael Simpson, a Republican from Idaho. Chris Stewart, a Republican from Utah. Scott Taylor, a Republican from Virginia. David Valadao, a Republican from California. And Steve Womack, a Republican from Arkansas. And David Young, a Republican from Iowa. These are all Congress members that voted for horse slaughter. And as you can see, this horse is being shot over and over again before he expires. And these Republicans, most of them Republicans, I hate to say, have no heart, no compassion for the animals. And they're usually the same people that vote to take away our Medicare, vote to take away welfare for the poor, vote to take away abortion rights. But if you ask them to set a fund for these unwanted children that will be born, oh no, they won't do that. So they're hypocrites. They don't care about anything but business and money, in my opinion. And they really need to be removed. And so I hope that you all watching this are really going to do something about it and call Congress, because these members are diabolical, in my opinion, and just there's no other word for it. Cruel, heartless people. And they need to be called out. And the only way that they're going to, I think, start paying attention to what 80% of the American public want, which is not to slaughter our horses, and to allow our horses to get back on the lands and you know, to fertilize the land, because that's what horse manure does. It reseeds everything the horse eats, all the seeds. They don't digest really well, and so they refertilize the land as they go. And right now, all we have is cattle. That's our wildlife. You just don't see, you know, all the wonderful millions of diversity of animals that used to be. And so these are the culprits. They all want the horses slaughtered instead of just saying, yeah, let's find areas where we can rewild them, and let's make sure that the Wild Free Roaming Horse and Burro Act is enforced, and that the lands are returned to these horses where they can live. And BLM says, oh, well, you know, there's no water. Well, provide water. And in a lot of areas where they're saying no water and they're removing the horses, you see a big lake behind them. So if you go on YouTube and you type in wild horse roundups and wild horse education and just some of the footage that's going on, you'll see for yourself the big lie. And it's all because the cattle industry wants the wild horses' land. And these are the members that are going along with the cattle industry. And so that's why it's so important, folks, for us to call these members and let them know that you're not going to vote for these kind of people. Robert Adderholt, big, big, powerful man on the Appropriations Committee, using your tax dollars to reinstate horse slaughter here. Luckily, the Senate Appropriations side did not vote for horse slaughter, just by 1 or 2 votes. And so it's kind of in limbo right now for the 2018 omnibus budget, and I don't know which way it's going to go. That's why it's so important right now to call these Congress members and let them know. And that's the number, the switchboard number. And you can ask for any one of those, just dial 0 and ask for any of these members. Martha Roby, Alabama, Harold Rogers, a Republican from Kentucky, Michael Simpson, from a Republican from Idaho, Chris Stewart, Republican from Utah, Scott Taylor, a Republican from Virginia, David Valadao, Republican from California, and Steve Womack, a Republican from Arkansas, and David Young, a Republican from Idaho. And so what I'm going to do right now is we're going to call. I'm going to show you just what you can do and what you can say to these monsters. That's what they are to me, monstrosities. We're going to call. I'm going to choose one and so that's what you're going to hear. That's a switchboard. That's the number up there on the screen. And then you might be put on hold, and you can choose any of these members to call. Doesn't matter whether they're from your district or not. You just call them and let them know how you feel. And you can call your own Congress member too, and ask if they are for horse slaughter. Hello? So we got disconnected. Call your Congress members and ask them, do you support horse slaughter? Because if you do, I'm not voting for you. Now, I'm going to put up the names of the Congress members that voted for horse slaughter, voted for this obscene cruelty. There they are on the screen for all the world to see. A woman, no less, Kay Granger from Texas. Disgusting. Hideous person, in my opinion. I mean, how could anyone be proud to vote for horse slaughter? There's some more. Dan Newhouse, Steve Lazio, Martha Robbie, Alabama, Harold Rogers. Just hideous people that need to be removed from Congress once and for all. And I ask God, right here in front of everyone, get rid of them. You're witnessing Auschwitz of our horses. Hasn't stopped, folks. And it won't stop. It won't stop with the people as long as it's happening to the animals. Because people love animals. In fact, most people love animals more than people. So if they can do it to animals, they'll do it to people. The full story of Hillside investigation at Turner's Slaughterhouse will soon be made available. Now, in the background, you can hear the horses that are being shot. And those horses know. Horses are so telepathic. And that was a BLM horse right there. You can see its tattoo. So that's a wild horse off the range. And a lot of these BLM horses, they'll sell them to people that they know are known kill buyers, like Tom Davis. They sold these horses at $10 a head. But if you and I try to buy a horse like from the BLM, it's $400 a head. Plus they come and inspect your property, which is a good thing. But to the kill buyer, Tom Davis, oh no. No, he gets them $10 a head at your tax dollars. And then the BLM ships them to him at $140,000 of our tax dollars, which was illegal. They got caught, but you can't even get the Department of Justice to prosecute them. So all these horses are waiting for slaughter. And on the screen, you're seeing all the members of Congress that voted to reinstate horse slaughter for the 2018 omnibus budget with your tax dollars. And these horses are betrayed by the American public to allow this to happen. Well, not the American public. A lot of the American public doesn't even know. But there are horse owners. I talked to one, a very devoted horse owner, and she believes in horse slaughter. She believes this is humane. And yet she takes excellent care of her horse. So go figure that one. These are all members of Congress that voted to reinstate horse slaughter. I hope that you'll write down their names and call them and let them know what monsters they are, how cruel, how diabolical, how they could use our tax dollars for such a obscene, perverted industry. Now we're going to take a look at not only the cruel aspects of horse slaughter, but also the unhealthy aspects of horse slaughter. Because many of these horses have had butazol, and butazol is a painkiller that is given to most horses during their lifetime, and there's no studies to determine how long it stays in their muscle tissue or fat tissue, and it gives a very rare form of cancer to young children, and that's a proven fact. And all these horses served their owners as best they could. They put up with our misunderstandings of them, our abuse of them. So often we just expect them to do everything that we want them to do. And we don't understand that horses are people too. Yes, they do have their own language, believe it or not. And if you start reading books on people who have studied their language and you learn how to communicate with them in their language, it opens up a whole new world. And we're so used to just having dogs and cats, so we don't understand the marvelous world of horses. And these poor horses, no water, just waiting to be slaughtered. It is so evil, folks, and it's got to stop. And these people on the screen, in my opinion, are diabolical, obscene, evil people that need to be removed from office. They do not represent the compassion of the American people. 80% of Americans do not want horse slaughter reinstated. That's a fact with the poll given. They do not want horse slaughter reinstated. But these people on the screen, and I'm going to name some more that I haven't put on the screen yet. Michael Simpson from Idaho, Chris Stewart, Republican from Utah, Scott Taylor, Republican from Virginia. This is a Canadian horse slaughter plant, and you're looking from the rooftop down into the kill box. Captive bolt pistol operator, that's not going to get him out. And we're watching horses go into slaughter. There's no humane way to do it with these horses, because some you might be able to shoot with a captive bolt or a gun the first time and get a lucky hit, but many move their head too fast, and you have to be shot several times. So I'm going to put on the screen, I'm going to name to you, while you're watching this, the Congress members that voted to reinstate horse slaughter. Martha Roby from Alabama, Harold Rogers, Republican from Kentucky, Michael Simpson, Republican from Idaho, Chris Stewart, Republican from Utah, Scott Taylor, Republican from Virginia, David Valadao, Republican from California, Steve Womack, Republican from Arkansas, and David Young, Republican from Iowa. None of these Republicans would vote to have themselves slaughtered this way, would they? Oh, no. First sign of illness, and they're in the hospital getting excellent care. You know, I'm glad that you can't really see this too well, folks. You're seeing from a rooftop angle horses being slaughtered. And this horse in here was left for 4 minutes before they actually, you can see the tremors he's going through and the pain. Now, there's no one out here to help these horses but ourselves. And it's imperative that you call Congress. And that's the number. And contact these members. Horse 174 left for over 6 minutes. You know, left there to suffer and die a slow and agonizing death. And Michael Simpson thinks this is okay. Chris Stewart thinks it's okay. Scott Taylor, David Valadao, Republican from California, Steve Womack, Republican from Arkansas, and David Young, Republican from Iowa. Notice they're mostly Republicans. All these diabolical people that represent the American people voting to reinstate horse slaughter. And they don't even bother to research and find out whether or not it's cruel or, you know, how to stop it. Using your tax dollars, folks. It's just beyond the pale, the evilness. I hope you'll call Congress and let your Congress member know that you won't vote for him or her if she does that. So these are the members of Congress that voted to reinstate horse slaughter, and you can look them up by just Googling Congress members that reinstated horse slaughter. And you'll come up with the Humane Society of the United States website, and it's an article, and you will see all their names. And I'm hoping that you'll call them and let them know how you feel about them wasting your tax dollars to reinstate horse slaughter. Now, this is the Veterinarians for Equine Welfare, and it's a question and answer on horse slaughter with Dr. Nick Dodman, and it says, briefly, can you summarize your position on equine slaughter controversy? And the answer from him, in the U.S., horses are companion animals and are part of our national heritage. Some parts are lucky enough to have horses running wild and free, but most are bred and raised and bought and sold for our pleasure and entertainment. Whether they are racehorses, show horses, or riding horses, they are owned by people who pay a considerable amount of money for them, plus hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a month to keep them. At the end of the useful working lives, the best arrangement would be for the horses to be retired and literally put out to grass, but a second and sometimes necessary option is to have them humanely destroyed through a process termed euthanasia. Euthanasia literally means good death and should not involve something akin to falling asleep and then simply passing away. And should involve something akin to falling asleep and then simply passing away. This is, in my opinion, best achieved by lethal injection of an overdose of barbiturates. This is the least that an owner can do for a faithful companion animal that has served its master throughout its lifetime. For such an animal to be openly and covertly spirited away by a kill buyer, transported hundreds if not thousands of miles, terrified in overcrowded and inhumane conditions to a feedlot, subsequently to a slaughter plant, to be shot and butchered for the gastronomic pleasure of people in another country is an abomination that is beyond my comprehension. I cannot understand why anyone would condone such a practice. And then, let's see here. We're going to go down a bit. Then he's talking about, okay, what makes equine slaughter for meat consumption any different than cow, pig, or chicken slaughter for identical purposes? Answer. As I mentioned, horses are common companion animals, not food animals, at least not in the U.S. We do not slaughter and export our dogs or our cats for consumption, and it is my considered opinion that we should not slaughter and export horse flesh either. Horses, like cats and dogs, have been raised as companions. They are interacted with, socialized, named, and bought into our families, thus adding to their suffering when they are sent to slaughter. Because horses are not food animals, they can be and are treated with medications that are not approved for use in food animals, and this constitutes a health hazard for the consumer, as consumption of food animals treated with these drugs would not be permitted. But the FDA does not control the consumption of tainted meat in foreign countries, and the American Veterinarian Medical Association doesn't seem to care, so it is a case of foreign consumer beware. Furthermore, since it is not geared up for horse slaughter, neither the transportation or slaughter processes itself are humane. Horses are temperamentally completely different from cattle, should not be transported in the same way, and should not be slaughtered in the same way. So you can go to this website and read this for yourself, folks. Get educated and educate your Congress members about this issue. All right, that's enough about the horse slaughter issue. We're going to move on now. We're going to move on now to air pollution. So everyone who is driving needlessly, including myself, is contributing to our own dementia, our own possible contamination, whatever you want to call it, of getting Alzheimer's disease. And so let's watch this. That's why it's so important we start getting mass transportation and start using it. One of the really bad things is nanotechnology. Nanotechnology is in everything now, our paints in our cars and everything, rugs, makeup. And if you take 10 hydrogen atoms and stack them together, that's the size of one nanoparticle. And so industry is making these nanoparticles to strengthen steel, to strengthen material that normally isn't strong. And it's in our air, it's everywhere, and our body doesn't know how to deal with it. And it's a problem that the media does not even talk about. And so I was reading the Science News, and that's where I first discovered this article. And I hope that you will start doing your part to make sure that you use your resources wisely. And you only drive when you need to. And bicycle is so much fun, or take the bus and do other things that help our world become a healthier place for your own sake. All right.
New research suggests there may be a connection between cognitive decline and heavily polluted air. According to U.S. researchers, elderly women who breathe polluted air, such as from car exhausts, have a higher risk of developing dementia and suffering cognitive decline. The research also suggests that women who carry the gene ApoE4 have a much higher chance of developing Alzheimer's disease if exposed to similar air pollution. These dangerous particles are found in pollution from car exhaust fumes, power plants, and even burning wood. The research was led by the University of Southern California and published in the journal Translational Psychiatry. Keep watching for more videos on all.
Tiny particles of pollution inside brain tissue could be contributing to diseases such as Alzheimer's. The study, led by scientists at Lancaster University in the UK, raises new questions about the health risks of air pollution. Our science editor, David Shookman, assesses the findings.
A pale haze over Mexico City, one of the most polluted places on Earth. It's well known that exhaust fumes can trigger breathing difficulties, heart trouble, even premature death. But now a new study raises another worrying possibility. At Lancaster University, this small tray contains samples of brain, taken from people who'd lived and died in Mexico City and in Manchester. And too small to see with the naked eye, are tiny traces of pollution, particles of iron.
We can identify that there are millions of these magnetic pollution particles in the brain. In 1 gram of human brain tissue, there will be millions of these magnetic pollution particles.
And what effect could that have?
Well, that's a million opportunities for those particles to create damage to the cells in the brain. Tiny.
The particles are known as magnetite.
Yeah. So these are particles that came from a Manchester case.
They can form naturally in the brain, like this one. By contrast, a rounded shape means they come from traffic, created in the high temperatures inside engines. So why could this pollution matter? While the largest particles are trapped by the nose, smaller ones can get into the lungs and then the bloodstream. And the very smallest can pass through the nerves that connect the nose to the brain, where they've been found in this study. So it's possible, but not confirmed, that they may encourage what are called plaques to develop, breaking the connections between brain cells, as you get with conditions like Alzheimer's. What this research shows is that the incredibly small particles blowing around in traffic pollution can make their way into the brain. Now, this doesn't prove that exposure to pollution automatically leads to conditions like Alzheimer's, but it does make it much more plausible. It's early days for this research, and no one really knows if there is a link.
This study shows us, I think for the first time, that pollutants like magnetite can get into the brain. That's obviously important, but what it doesn't tell us is whether they have any role in the development of Alzheimer's disease. That's just something we don't know.
This study does not itself have answers. Instead, it opens a whole new avenue of research into possible connections between traffic and the brain. David Shukman, BBC News.
Disease and dementia could be the air we breathe. A new study by the National Taiwan University's College of Public Health says particulate matter in the air can damage heart and lung functions and cause brain inflammation, leading to higher risks of dementia.
The gloomy sky in Taipei is filled with particulate matter brought by sandstorms, traffic fumes, and emissions from factories. Each pollutant is hazardous to the health. Air pollutants can enter our brain through our nasal cavity and damage the blood-brain barrier. Substances absorbed on the surface also affect the brain, says NTU Associate Professor Chen Yanqing. The College of Public Health of National Taiwan University said that once air pollutants reach the brain, they start to affect brain function and cause dementia. Scientists found that people living in northern Taiwan who are exposed to particulate matter measuring 10 micrometers and below, and those exposed to high levels of ozone, are also more likely to come down with Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. It is uncertain how long a person must be exposed to such pollutants before being affected. Whenever possible, wear a mask when you go out. Don't leave the window open too much at home. These are basic preventive measures, says Chung. The researcher also said that the risks are greater in southern Taiwan, where air pollution is worse.
That there are literally millions of tiny magnetic crystals inside human brains. And those crystals shouldn't be there. They consist of magnetite, a strongly magnetic material that is damaging to our brains. It causes the formation of very reactive oxygen species such as free radicals that cause cell damage and eventually cell death, the hallmarks of diseases like Alzheimer's disease. Where do these particles come from? They look strikingly similar to magnetic particles that occur in the airborne pollution mix. And where do those particles arise from? They come from vehicles, particularly through combustion of fuel, through the frictional heating of brake pads, and we can actually walk down the street and be breathing those particles up through our noses and directly inside our brains. Our work doesn't yet prove a causal link between these particles in the atmosphere and Alzheimer's disease, but it's a potential environmental risk factor that we can't afford to ignore.
Now, one of the ways that pollution is affecting our brains is the chemtrails. A lot of people don't even understand what chemtrails are, but they're very real. Our government is spraying these chemtrails, as you will soon learn, and it's important to support your Congress member to stop this with legislation. Thousands of people, indeed millions of people, have called and have tried, but so far we haven't gotten anywhere. But we have to keep trying, and maybe one day
when my kids were little, I used to read to them from Alice in Wonderland. And I remember we learned that the Mad Hatter was mad because it represented hatters of the time, and that apparently the guys who made hats used mercury to turn the fur into felt, and they would breathe the mercury, and it would cause brain damage, and hence the Mad Hatter. And that was in the 70s and 80s that I had my young kids, and I, at the same time, was learning that we were supposed to avoid using aluminum pots and pans because there was apparently a connection to autism. So that was the first time for me that I made any connection between heavy metals and human health. And then a few years ago, I learned that there was an unnatural amount of aluminum in the soil, and that there was a program spraying aluminum and other heavy metals up into the atmosphere. And so I wanted to check it out. And that's the first way that chemtrails showed up for me. Basically, chemtrails is a geoengineering program where airplanes fly at high altitudes and they spray chemicals into the atmosphere, including aluminum, barium, and strontium. And then those metals fall to the ground and they land in our bodies, on the soil, in our trees, in our food, and in our water. Many people confuse chemtrails with the normal jet contrails. The difference is that the normal jet contrails actually dissipate within minutes, while the heavy metals in the chemtrails cause those trails to persist for hours. And it's not a hypothetical thing. There are 32 states that already have legislation that's related to weather modification. The U.S. agencies that are documented to be involved in it include the U.S. Air Force, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the U.S. Department of the Interior, the National Science Foundation, and I know China boasted about using cloud seeding and weather changing before the 2008 Olympics in order to keep the opening ceremony dry. So that this is happening is completely documented. It's just that you have to know where to look because it's not talked about on mainstream weather reports. And this is where it gets controversial. And it's kind of weird because even though it's factual that there are metals in the atmosphere and factual that those metals are falling to the ground, when you acknowledge that or question the legitimacy or the legality or the safety or the morality, it becomes controversial. And really, that's sad because if you're questioning something that has such major impact on us and on future generations and on our planet, it seems to me that it should be one of the most natural and encouraged parts of life and education. So if you're not educated about this issue, I encourage you to do some basic research, and I've put some links at the bottom of this blog to help make that easy. I personally don't know anybody who is informed who isn't concerned, although the range of concerns is vast. For some, it might be that they think that this is a benevolent weather modification program, like putting snow on ski slopes in a bad season, but that it's inadvertently having some negative health impacts. Somebody else might think that the so-called solar radiation management is backfiring because the supposed idea is that you blanket the sky with these heavy metals and it reflects the sun back to itself. However, it's also creating a blanket and trapping the heat in, and so they are concerned about that. Somebody else might think that it's a corporate agenda to get an upper hand on commodities trading by being able to control and therefore predict the weather. And when you realize that 80% of the global economy is impacted by weather, that would certainly give someone an upper hand. Somebody else might just think it's a very sinister plan to sicken people and further control our food supply. The point is that there are any number of concerns no matter what belief system motivates you. And that's significant because I think it both validates the range of dangers and at the same time it informs what we can do about it. Because even for those of us who are convinced that we have a problem, our motivations and concerns vary, and that means that our strategies for engagement also have to vary. So if you want to get engaged in this issue, and I hope you do, I recommend that you first identify what part of this most concerns you. What is your particular passion? because what we notice is that if each of us is doing the part that we're most naturally passionate about, we can sustain our efforts, we don't burn out, and it turns out somebody else wants to do a part that you don't want to do. And you can check that out at thrivemovement.com on the Solutions Hub. There are tools there to explore what other people are doing and also to explore your own purpose and passion. So currently at thrivemovement.com, we're getting the money and the infrastructure together to create a more enhanced Solutions Hub that's going to make it easier to share best practices globally, to share data and strategies and successes in order to really pull this together and focus on this issue effectively. Meanwhile, you can go to the Solutions Hub, you can find if there's a group in your area working on chemtrails. I went yesterday, there were over 60 devoted to this issue. And you can be doing the homework that we're going to need to have be done when we launch what we're going to do, a webinar, a global webinar, taking on this issue that really shows how to do whole systems problem solving so that you're doing your part, someone else is doing their part, and it turns out that all the sectors are covered. So here are some things that you could be focused on right now, and you can come up with others on your own. You could map out the whole chemtrail network and see who's doing what. You could research the most credible information on what companies are supplying the planes, what chemicals have been identified, what kind of related legislation is there, who's got the patents on the solar radiation management. You could check out the health impacts on humans, on the soil, on food, on water. You could unpack the futures forecasting and commodities trading and figure out who's winning in that market and do they have any connections to the planes or to the chemicals. You could look into what treaties address international toxic spraying. You could draw a poster that would help highlight the issue. You could write a song like Skull did. You could, if you have a high-powered camera, take pictures. You can share the app at the bottom of this blog. If you're a lawyer, figure out what we're going to be needing for a class action lawsuit. You can contribute money to the people and organizations whose work you most value in this. You can share this blog. You can add to the list and post it. The point is, there's something that you can do that we need done. I'm confident that we can stop chemtrails. We need to get informed. We need to communicate and coordinate with each other. We need to be organized, and we need to act effectively. We're going to do what we can at thrivemovement.com to facilitate that. And in the meantime, do whatever it is that concerns you most. It doesn't matter how much that's different from what concerns somebody else. It's that we're all concerned that unites us. So do your part, share what you learn, and keep looking up. Thanks.
Join the conversation. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. And here are some ways that you can reduce air pollution and perhaps the possibility of you getting dementia or Alzheimer's.
As a percentage of our total greenhouse gas emissions, cars, trucks, and power plants seem to be the biggest contributors to climate change. But the elephant in the room is that our consumption of meat is actually the leading cause. When its effects and byproducts are taken together, animal agriculture accounts for about half of global emissions. On average, each American eats 275 pounds of meat a year. That's like every man, woman, and child eating a quarter pounder every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There are over 1.5 billion cows on Earth, and each one emits 65 gallons of methane a day as they digest their food. And methane is a potent greenhouse gas, trapping 25 times more heat in our atmosphere than carbon dioxide. And when it just comes to sheer waste, 2,500 dairy cows are equivalent to a city of over 400,000 people. Every minute, the animals raised for food in the U.S. produce 7 million pounds of waste. But where does it all go? Into our waterways and oceans, of course, creating gigantic dead zones. To make room for all these farm animals, we've had to remake our planet. In Brazil, this means clearing the Amazon at an astounding rate. Every second, another acre of the world's rainforests are cleared. And as our most diverse biospheres disappear, every day another 110 animals and insect species go extinct along with it. Taking their place, livestock now covers 45% of the total land on our planet and uses 1/3 of our fresh water supply. To produce just 1 pound of beef takes over 2,000 gallons of water. And because we're so inefficient growing food to feed our food, in many countries people are starving as vegetables that are grown all around them and should go to feeding them are instead fed to animals for wealthy people to eat. And it's not just land animals. We're pulling 90 million tons of fish from our oceans each year. For every 1 pound of fish caught, 5 pounds of unintended marine species are brought up along with it and discarded as bykill. So how can we, as individuals, solve this massive problem? Simply put, we can eat a lot less meat and dairy. Every acre of land gives us a choice. We can either use it to grow 250 pounds of meat or 25,000 pounds of plant-based food. Even though it's too extreme for most of us, it's worth considering that a person who follows a vegan diet, meaning they eat no meat and dairy, produces 50% less CO2 and uses 1/11 the amount of oil, 1/13 the water, and 1/18 the land compared to a meat eater. Of course, going completely vegan is really hard. I love a good burger, chicken breast, or cheese pizza every once in a while, but by becoming more educated and mindful about the costs to our environment, I've significantly cut down on the amount of animal products I consume. The side benefits are that I'm healthier and I'm not contributing nearly as much to the inhumane treatment of animals. The majority of Americans consider themselves environmentalists, but as more and more of us learn that our animal consumption is the leading cause of species extinction, ocean dead zones, water pollution, habitat destruction, and climate change causing greenhouse gas emissions, are enough of us prepared to make necessary changes to our daily lives to truly protect our environment? Thanks for watching. Like and share this video to help me spread this message.
Now, we're all part of the problem, and we've heard that you got to be part of the solution. So things that you can do are go on YouTube and just type in, how can I reduce my carbon footprint? You'll come up with all kinds of great videos on what you can do. And these are just examples. giving up meat even once a week is not only good for your health, but it's going to make a dent. And carpooling or going with a friend or biking, any of these things that you do are going to help reduce this pollution that is destroying our brains. And that's what it's doing. I've already shown you that. Air pollution is now attributed to Alzheimer's and dementia. And people who fly excessively, reduce your flying time, and you'll be doing a great favor to the planet. And if we do these things consciously, all of us together, it has an enormous impact. If your house burnt down, consider this time really making an effort not to use wood again. That you're going to build with something that doesn't burn. There's adobe, there's cob houses, there's bottle houses, there's cement houses, there's all kinds of wonderful alternatives that you can use. But if we don't all make an effort together, we're not going to make it as a species, and we're killing all the other species as well. Even reducing hairspray or reducing getting your nails done. All these things count. And turning off your lights. Lights take a lot of electricity, believe it or not. So these are things you can do, folks. And I hope you will, for the sake of your children and the sake of all the animals on the planet and all the people. Thank you for watching. I'm Annie Griffin, and this is Meet America.